Cool, yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Sean Kelleher. I graduated from computer science in UCC 2 years ago now, I think. Since then I did internships in a few places, just briefly, and then I was like, you know, I've had kind of enough of industry for the moment, I'm just going to try and make it on my own. And yeah, so I was working just trying to do kind of social apps for a while. I didn't really test it on anyone, so it didn't really go anywhere. Just kind of fizzled out, and with greenfield projects, I kept thinking about other things I'd rather be doing. And what basically eventually happened is I was working on this social app called, I can't even remember what it was called at this stage, and I was just getting so frustrated, and I just took kind of a weekend off from coding that, and I just said, you know what? I started off making games. I haven't made a game in ages. And I just got this concept in my head of this little puzzle game, which I called Blup. Just a stupid name, but I was concerned more about the coding of it than anything. It was just a silly puzzle game. You rotate blocks, and you can stick the blocks together at various stages so that they become bigger, and you can rotate them in better ways. And the idea is there's two semicircles, and the idea is to match them up, and you win the level that way. And yeah, I think I coded up, say, the first prototypical level, functionally full in just a weekend, just because I was bored. Just using, I believe I say here, yeah, so just JavaScript canvas. And I was like, I actually left it for a while after that. I, picked it up some weekends, just here and there. And then I was like, yeah, I could potentially put this on the App Store. And I was working away on it. I fleshed it out with, say, different features, mainly levels, and it'd track your progress, and you could, have different levels of completion for each of the levels. And I was like, I wasn't sure about web-based games, but I knew, like, I have a lot of games on my mobile phone, and I was like, maybe I could make a smartphone app out of it, game. And so I integrated PhoneGap. So basically just takes a web page and turns it into an app, more or less, by rendering the browser page on your phone, but hiding all the browser elements. And that was a disaster, because I was doing all the scaling and rendering myself, so it scaled quite nicely on the browser. But then when I actually tried to run it on mobile with PhoneGap, the retry text was up here, the actual block sizes were up here, the background was down here, and just the scaling was all over the place. So that was like just a first wake-up call that, yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing all the kind of scaling and graphics stuff on my own. And yeah, again, greenfield projects, I was like, I just took what I learned from that and said, I'm going to move on to the next exciting thing. So I started off my next project, which was Trace, which is actually on the app stores now. So this is the first one I actually made to completion. And part of the reason for that was I updated to using Phaser instead of just drawing it directly. So Phaser handled all the kind of scaling issues that I had. So I could do it really nicely full screen, and it would take care of all, browser fragmentation or device fragmentation and different screen resolutions and all this kind of good stuff. It also provided kind of a platform for actually just drawing sprites to the screen, sprites to the canvas. So you basically, you got native canvas almost, but you got all these nice kind of primitives on top of it. You also got access to audio and text formatting and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was my second game, but the first game that I actually released. But I was developing with this PhoneGap and Phaser combination, but main problem was with, before I actually released it, I found PhoneGap quite, I was using PhoneGap Build actually, which is a cloud-based service, which is fantastic for these kind of apps because it means you can just develop on one machine and I think I had probably Linux at the time, and I was developing for Android and iOS, and my computer was actually good at building neither of those. For some reason, my Linux machine couldn't do Android. But PhoneGap Cloud lets you just build native apps from these HTML pages. So I was using that for a while. And it has a really rich ecosystem of plugins. So you can do everything from ads to kind of multiplayer games to all these different kind of integrations, except all the plugins are crap. They worked really poorly, for me personally anyway. They, just like there was so much configuration that had to go into each of them, and even after following all the steps, like most, you go down through some of the documentation and you see like some of the screenshots of the how-tos are, his user interface is in Korean, and you're like, well, yeah, this was kind of a Google Translate job to convert the user guide into English. And yeah, it was just a pain to set up. So before I actually published this, I actually moved it onto Cocoon. It used to be Cocoon.io, now it's just Cocoon. And yeah, basically worked a lot better. So what did that approach give me? So I was able to do, yeah, basically you had ads and multiplayer and in-app purchases out of the box ready to be integrated with your plugins. So with PhoneGap, for instance, you have to actually go through GitHub and NPM, try and locate packages that are somewhat good, whereas Cocoon just has these kind of 4 essentials straight out of the box. And it also has it's specially designed for games and kind of apps that are designed for Canvas. And it creates a special Canvas booster, or Canvas Plus it calls it, which just kind of gives a speed boost and performance boost to all of your Canvas-based apps. So I started doing that, and yeah, so that was my first app on the App Store. I think I've got a screenshot or a bit of gameplay footage from it that I can potentially open here. So it was again, these are very simple games, like fully utilizing the fact that I could use JavaScript to make them very quickly. And yeah, so it was just a silly little game, but it was also, I was like, by this stage, I was out of college nearly a year and a half. I was like, I just want to have a product on the App Store just to validate my own stuff. So and what I'm doing. So yeah, this was it. Ran into lots of issues, boring stuff on the App Store, like won't get into that kind of stuff. But yeah, learned basically just was another learning experience. But traction was a big problem, just because I had no user retention integrated into it and no kind of sharing, and main problem was it was kind of funded by kind of advertising, and I was like, I don't even like advertising myself really. I was like, I want to try doing a game with in-app purchases. Basically just another prototype to try out a different concept again. So this is Kudasu, which is just a spin on Sudoku, where instead of adding the numbers into the boxes, you have to try and take them away. This is probably the product I learned the most from, and you'll find out why in a few minutes. So the idea is very simple. You have these numbers, tap on a square, everything in that row and column go down by 1. The aim is to clear all the boxes, but you can't click on a box if it's got an empty box in the same row and column. And I think I've got a preview here again, if I can click on it. Whoops. Okay. No, I don't have a preview. I'll just skip that. But basically, so this was my first problem when I actually started launching this. Put it up on Reddit, and one of the first comments I got was, I was just eating in box noodle with my mum, and I got this message on Reddit that says, "Feels like a clone of Safari." I was like, what the hell is Safari? And I was like, trying to eat and make conversation. And I'm like, panicking inside. I was like, oh shit, I'm a spoofer. I was like, what the hell is this thing? So that taught me a valuable lesson to actually research my, actually put out, my MVP and find out if other people are doing similar things before I launch the full product and, invest a lot of time in it. But I was still wondering, why the hell hadn't I heard of this? And I looked it up. And God, that's exactly the same as what I'm doing. Yeah, you have all these numbers, you touch them, and everything on the row and column goes down by one. How have I not heard of this before? It's Japanese. It was on the Japanese App Store, and I was like, how did this guy even find this? But yeah, no, I accidentally made a clone of Safari anyway, so I learned my lesson there to, no matter, especially with simple ideas, someone else has probably thought of it, so you really need to get your product out early and actually validate that, yeah, number one, no one's already done it before. Then I ran into my second bit of constructive criticism. So someone posted up, oh, I thought I had commented those parts out, but didn't mean to have the swear words in there. So okay, the app is spammy as heck, and it's annoying as also heck. Really, this thing sucks. It's the worst app I have installed right now, and I'm on the verge of uninstalling because of the ads, upselling, share begging, and Facebook login pop-ups. Hard mode is fun though, which I saw as a positive. But anyway, I was like, what is he even talking about? Because yeah, I had ads just to, again, try them out in a different setting, really. I think I was experimenting with full screen ads and stuff and different, because I had banner ads in the first one. But I was like, wow, what is he talking about? Upselling, share begging, and Facebook login. I was like, I got back to him. I was like, yeah, I think I asked for, a pop-up comes up once, I think, after you've, say, completed 10 levels in the app. Because he had tried out the free version online, obviously, and had come back and said, the app version is really spammy. And I was like, yeah, I've got a login in the app version, and it's only supposed to come up once after you play 10 levels, and it should never come up again. And he was saying, yeah, it keeps coming up for me. And I was like, what the hell is going wrong? So I looked at the actual code for this. And yeah, this is really messy code, because I'm writing with JavaScript, they're tiny games. I'm like, I could spend more time working on making them beautiful and make maintenance really nice. But considering the turnover time for these games is like a month, I really am going to be paying much for not being able to maintain it down the line. But basically, this is where all the problem was happening with the pop-up. So what this is basically saying is there was kind of a screen transition, and in between basically your 10th level and your 11th level, after more or less the transition has happened and you're in between screens, and if I basically haven't shown the share message yet, and as long as the game isn't paused, can't even remember why that's there, it basically say, if the alpha of the pop, basically it fades in, and it's saying while it hasn't faded in yet, increase the fade, and so until it actually gets shown. And then once you've actually shown the pop-up, basically save it, and this extra progress has, more or less saved the fact that this share has been, basically the share has been shown before, so you never have to show it again if this has been saved and this logic was being read up above. The problem I realized was that he was actually canceling the pop-up before it had actually fully shown. So even before he had seen what the pop-up was, he had closed it, which meant that it kept popping up indefinitely. So that was my, the first big problem anyway. And yeah, so getting on to the most recent problem with it, which I'll kind of finish up with, hey, I paid you $1 to remove the ads, and the ads are still there. What kind of scam is this, OP? And like very valid, again, like this was probably 12 o'clock at night where I was like, you know, I'm so sick of the fact that this is a clone and this guy is effing me off. I'm like, you know, not in the mood for this. But then I get a complaint that the actual thing he paid for didn't happen. And I was like, what the hell? I'd actually put so much effort into designing the interface. So like, I think with the other app, like the ads actually covered a bit of the graphics even. And when you paid for them, it kind of got out of the way. But I'd actually put a lot of time into this game, making sure that it scaled properly. And so basically when you had ads, the game kind of nearly shrunk a bit and kind of had to get out of the way. And when you paid to remove the ads got out of the way and you got all this more screen real estate that you could then fill up with more graphics and stuff like that. I was like, what the hell happened? And I asked my girlfriend, and she bought the ads as well, and it wasn't going away. I jumped in and I was like, what the hell has actually happened? And this is kind of all the basically ad removal function. And it goes, this, you know, adds to the purchases. So it says that, you know, ads have been purchased before, so don't share them anymore. It says the ad height for the screen is 0. So basically, you can fill up that screen real estate. Then I do all this logic for actually recalculating what the screen height should be based on the dimensions of the phone and the dimensions of the game screen within the phone screen and relative to those. And basically, all this stuff is saying, you know, fill up the the extra phone space with just glorious gameplay and no more ads. And then, yeah, so that's what this is doing, set user scale to update that, refresh the actual game so that those changes are reflected, and then restart this state so the user actually sees the updated graphics. Nowhere in here do I actually remove the ads. Like, this is all just handling resizing the screen, and the ads are still stuck there at the top. And the problem was, I realized afterwards, was basically because I was using an ad network where, you know, they very explicitly say if we spot like ads coming up, you know, real ads, not generated test ads on your device, we will block your account. So I was like, oh, I'll just integrate ads at the end on production devices, and I'll just make sure that I actually remove them on my dev device, and I won't look at them on the dev device, which meant that I hadn't properly tested it with mock ads. So yeah, I ended up not removing them at all in the end. And yeah, so since then, yeah, I've been a lot more cautious with my games so far. I developed kind of a mocking interface now, so that all of these, like primarily ads anyway, are mocked out. So when I start a new game, I just see this blank canvas where the ads will be. When I actually, you know, launch the game, and it detects that it's my device, my test device, so it won't show them on that, and also does neat things like listens to the actual events that real ads will send. So I can basically, that's again the neat thing about JavaScript is basically you can basically just replace all these, you know, hard-coded constructs or global variables, and just have nice. It has nice mocking capabilities, which is one of the reasons I chose JavaScript for these kind of projects. And yeah, there was also, yeah, and even for things like in-app purchases, I'm able to, you know, test my in-app purchases without actually creating a test user. I can just say that, you know, because it's running on the test device, just do a mock signal when the purchase is complete and all these kind of things. And yeah, so since then, I've basically just been working on prototypes. I've done a couple. They're on the website CleverKiwiGames in the kind of lab section. So I you know, throw them up there whenever they're ready. But since then, I still have to stumble upon the thing that's actually going to make me rich. But yeah, it's basically experimentation from here on out, getting user feedback and iterating and all these kind of lovely things. So yeah, that's basically just a quick run through of my story of the technology as I tried out and used. And yeah, I'm open to any questions about anything really, end to end. So yeah, thank you. Yes, sorry.
Question. The Cocoon library, you said that provides all these extra services.
Yeah.
Is that an extension of Phaser, or is that?
So Phaser is actually a JavaScript library, so it's completely independent of Cocoon. So you can use Phaser with when you're like I make my games as web pages more or less, and Phaser enables me to do that. And so particularly it lets me not worry about someone resizing the screen and all this kind of stuff. Cocoon then lets you actually render that web page as if it was a native app, more or less. It basically just renders the web page as a full screen web page almost on the device. So they can actually be used independently.
But that's providing services that you call from your Phaser code. So is there libraries that you import then?
Well, not necessarily from the Phaser code. You can actually call the Cocoon libraries from just regular JavaScript. And yeah, they're kind of like, it's based off of, it used to be called Cordova. I think it's actually called PhoneGap now. But yeah, Cocoon is basically still using PhoneGap in the backend, and what it is more or less is it just has all the native code underneath and gives you kind of a JavaScript interface on top of that. So you call a JavaScript function, it runs an Objective-C function or an Android function to say, render an ad or, run an in-app purchase or something like that, what have you.
More questions? Do you have a single code base for the two platforms, or do you have bits that are different?
Yeah, so that was one of my reasons for approaching it this way, is just literally one code base for everything, and then Cocoon or PhoneGap or whatever you're using takes care of all the kind of platform independence issues. And in fact, so I even fleshed out my own kind of a framework for mocking out that kind of side of things as well. So I've gotten even more platform independence that way. I don't have to worry about, say, unique error codes coming from each code base, or I've more platform independent ways of actually figuring out, because even I do have some sections of the code does change a small bit, just for I think iPhone kind of handles player logins a bit differently to Android. So for the Android native experience, you can say you'll have a login button, and you can say, log me into the app, and then you can see your multiplayer options, and then it'll give you a logout option when you're logged in. Whereas iPhone, for the native experience, prefers to basically just have you logged in or out based on what your user settings are. So there's a small bit of code for handling that, but that's actually all just contained in the one user code base. I don't have it split up into modules or anything.
You end up with like an APK for Android and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And Cocoon and PhoneGap do a really nice job of basically just sorting out everything to do with keys, more or less. You generate, say, your key store for Android, and you generate your provisioning profiles, even though that's a massive headache. But you do all your provisioning profiles and all your, all these keys and stuff for Apple. You just shove them into PhoneGap or Cocoon, and they will, if you don't have those, they'll give you debug versions of your APKs and, what are they called, IPAs. And if you give them the keys and stuff, then they'll give you the actual non-encrypted release versions. Sorry, yeah. No problem.
Is there any issues with performance using canvas?
To be honest, I don't run into them because the games are kind of they're geared to be very small kind of games using mainly just graphics primitives. I've nearly designed them with those kind of limitations in mind, just so I don't actually hit them. I've taken kind of steps to make sure I'm not rendering too much at once. So I've never actually run into them just because I've been conscious of the potential for them. But yeah, that is one thing I would be wary of, but personally I haven't run into them yet. Thanks, man.